What's up, guys? Bass Animal Fishing here, and today we are going to have a short vlog for you, going over what I think is probably one of the most asked questions I get from my non-boaters in the back of the boat, and that is about my rod and reel combo. So a lot of times we'll be fishing, they'll ask me, what are you throwing? What line do you have on? I get this quite a bit from non-boaters, and I'll give you a quick rundown of what I use for my particular lakes, kind of west coast here. I fish a lot of deep, clear lakes, your Lake Meads, your Lake Mojaves, your Havasus, really clear water. We're talking, you can see down 30, 40 feet down, crystal clear. So a lot of non-boaters will ask, for instance, let's just start with a drop shot rod. For me out here, I'm using a medium light action rod. Most of the time 6-pound test on it. Very rarely will I go down to 4. There are times when I need to, but very rarely. 6-pound test on a medium light rod for me, spinning rod, is perfectly fine. Works for me. I can get long casts on it. It's definitely a light line, something I've got to have a medium light action rod so the fish is playing the rod more than the line. After that would be, say, my medium action, which I use quite a bit. Medium action spinning rod. Spinning rods for me on the medium action would be my shaky heads. It's going to be your Ned rigs. I'll throw a Ned rig on a medium light 6-pound test also. But a lot of times lately I've been throwing it on a medium action, about 8-pound test. I use a little bigger hook than the normal Neds. I'll use a 2-aught. Versus, most of your Neds is smaller Neds. I use a little bit bigger setup for that. So I can get away with your 8-pound test and a medium action rod. Like I said, shaky head, maybe a tube, things like that on that medium action, but 8-pound test. If I'm going to a medium action casting rod, which I use quite a bit, that would be, again, something I could throw a shaky head on if I wanted. Again, a tube if I wanted to. I throw small swim baits on that with very light heads. And that's about all I'm going to use my medium action casting rods for. Maybe small crankbait too. Sometimes I'll throw crankbait on those. I have crankbait rods that I use specifically for crankbaits. I use all Halo rods, and they make an amazing crankbait rod. Usually very small crankbaits, I'll use their medium action Spider Black Widow rod. And once I get any bigger than something pretty small, I'll go up to their crankbait rods. Next up for me would be my medium heavy action rods, which are, for most people out there, will tell you that's kind of your all-purpose casting rod. You can use that for a lot of things. But line-wise on those, the minimum I'm going to go with is 12-pound test. For me, I'm worried if I go 10-pound, the action on that rod, I don't want to break anything off. I could probably go 10 on it. I don't. Minimum on that is 12. I'll go up to 14. You can go even higher than that if you need, but 15-pound test, 12-pound test, that's usually what I'm throwing on my medium action rod. And that's all my spinner baits. Some of my smaller jigs I throw on that. I'll throw a lot of, buzz baits, stuff like that I'll throw on that. I won't throw crankbaits on it. But anything, chatter baits, spinner baits, jigs, Texas rig, all that stuff is my 12-pound test, and I may stay a little light on my line compared to some guys. 12-pound test, some guys be like, oh, 12, we want to go up on that. We have extremely clear water. These fish can see these baits very far away, and I don't have to worry about. I don't like to have to worry about too heavy a line and them seeing it. It is fluorocarbon. That's pretty much all I use is fluorocarbon. I'll use a braid backing, but fluorocarbon line. But those are your kind of baits, and that is your multi-purpose rod that I'm going to use, medium heavy. Once I get up to my heavy casting rod, then I kind of start at about 15-pound test on that, and usually I'm throwing that on my jigs, bigger, heavier jigs. I'll throw some bigger swim baits. Anything with a bigger gauge hook is what I'm going to be using those for. Not so much. It's not the action with that, and the heavier line that I'm going to use with it is, best suited with those big hooks, those big jig hooks. If I'm throwing a big swim bait with a big hook with it, something like that, that's what I'm going to throw with those. It's real. I keep it very simple. That's it. Flipping rods. I don't throw many of those out here. I have a few flipping rods that I use at certain lakes, but I don't fish them very often. But then that's when you go. Now you're starting to get up into the much heavier lines. Your 20-pound test. For me, that's what I'm using those for. And that's my basic setups. I mean, that is kind of to give you just a starting point. If you're getting into fishing, you're just starting out, you're in the back of the boat, you're not sure what you want to use rod wise and what you should be having. Reason I get this question a lot, I think, is because I do see guys using too heavy of a line on too light of a rod. And they'll ask, I can't cast my rod. I can't get my line out there. Why can't I get my line out? And I'll ask them, what are you using now? This is a medium action spinning rod. Okay, but they'll have 10-pound test, and then they might have like a 2000, 2500 series reel on it, and that's why they're not getting the distance out of it. Too small of a line, or too big of a line for too small of a combination. In that situation, 10-pound line. If I was using a spinning reel in a medium action, 10-pound would really be pushing it, but unless I went up a lot more in my reel size. So, we're talking 3,500. But that's just something I don't throw much anyway. So anyways, that's why I get that question, I think. Casting distance. And I see a lot of guys using too light of a line with too light of a rod, with too heavy a line. They're wondering why they're not getting as many bites, things like that. So that's the basic rundown of my setups. Very simple. We could go in depth to this and start breaking down all kinds of stuff, but this is just your basic kind of quick rundown of what I use, when I use it, what lines, what kind of baits in general am I using for those things, and that should give you a pretty good starting point to kind of get going. And when you're fishing with someone out of the back of their boat, give you an idea of what you need on your lines, what you need on your rods, reels, and line size. So any other questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, guys. Bass Ammo Fishing out.